Good morning and good afternoon. I'm Tim Regan with Senior Housing News. Thanks for joining us today on our webinar on digital marketing and lead generation. I think that one of the biggest impacts of COVID-19 on senior living has been what I've seen referred to as this pivot to digital. So we've seen how many senior living companies have shifted from sales and marketing strategies that stressed in-person interactions to strategies that cater to an online audience. And just as senior living providers have started to get more savvy with technology over the past year, so too have their prospects. So in short, senior living operators have realized that it's important to tell their stories digitally, not only because in-person tours are harder to do before the pandemic, but because the internet is now simply where their new residents' journeys begin. So today we're going to drill down on some digital marketing topics that senior living providers should know as they work to recover occupancy this year. We have four great panelists who I'll introduce now. We have Dave Grawl, Marketing Director at Dreamscape. We have Josh Weeum, Paid Media Director at Dreamscape. We have Eric Weilminster, Client Strategy and Partnership Manager at Dreamscape. And we have Lisa Carr, Digital Marketing Strategist at Dreamscape. Before we talk about digital marketing today, I want to go over just a couple housekeeping items. As a reminder, this is kind of a collaborative discussion. So if you would like to ask questions today, you can participate by asking questions in your Q&A box that should be in your GoToWebinar window. So just type those in and then we'll try to get to as many as we can at the end of the presentation. We might also sprinkle in a few during the presentation. And I also want to remind everyone that the recordings of the webinar will be made available after we conclude today. So with those housekeeping items behind us, let's get started. So Dave, I thought we would start with just sort of a general overview to catch us up to speed. So can you talk about, when we talk about pivot to digital, can you talk about what that means and also what you have seen in that regard over the past year?
Absolutely, no. Thank you, Tim. It's been an interesting year for sure. I mean, but I think it's really important to talk about that first. So the digital pivot, the shift, a digital first mindset. These terms got thrust into our vocabulary last March. So to understand everything that we're going to talk about today, I think it's really important that we first take a step back and make sure we understand the obstacle that we are shifting or pivoting to overcome. It's not really enough to know what to shift to. I mean, we all kind of know what to shift to, but building a successful digital marketing plan that's going to grow and build on itself requires a clear picture of that goal and the steps to get there. So I think it's really important today that we not just talk about the what, but the why and the how. And that's kind of where my mind is. So, all right. So why digital first marketing? Why digital pivot? Why now, right? So in this year, I mean, I've gone through this with everybody. I've been through this myself, you know, as a company that serves senior living, trying to help, you know, trying to just think through this, right? So what I've come to recently, I think in the beginning, we're all kind of triaging, right? We're all just kind of figuring it out. And I think that's true of all of us, right? But what I've come to recently is, would it surprise you if I said the pandemic is not the answer to the why or the why now? Digital marketing is how we survived the conditions of the pandemic. It was how we dealt with the effects, it wasn't the cause. So it's not the reason for making the shift. The pandemic threw a light on, okay, absolutely. That's the one that's been coming for years. I saw a stat the other day with like senior living near me in 2014 was not on Google Trends radar at all. As of now, as of this week, as of today, it's hitting 100. So they measure from 0 to 100. So in 6 years, 0 to 100, right? So, so I just think it's important that we understand that this has been coming for years, and some people are mid-reaction, some people are getting started, some people are already there, but it's more about the shifting customer journey and the behaviors of this generation of new residents. This generation of residents owns a smartphone, is going to find you through a Google search, reads and trusts online reviews. It is the fastest growing demographic on Facebook, not the biggest, but the fastest growing. So they're generally going to have an adult child. and grandchild, my 10-year-old can do this too, who's been they're even more in tune to your online presence than the senior is. So they're going to do a competitive analysis on you, right, before your sales team even gets to say one word. So your story needs to be delivered digitally, not because in-person tours were canceled. Those are the specifics, right? We worked through this year, but online is now where your new resident journey begins. It's the reason for the shift really is because the top of the funnel now begins online. That's the thing I've kind of come to realize this year. So I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to clarify, when you said the incoming generation, you're talking about the baby boomers, right?
Well, yeah, I think there's from the research I've done, I see there's an economic difference in the level of affordability and things like that. So there's issues there. But yeah, I mean, I think sometimes, I'm 41, we think about, um, if I think about senior living, sometimes I still catch myself thinking in context of my grandparents, but really I'm thinking about my parents. My parents are 70 and 72. Respect, they're the boomers, they're the new residents. It's not the people who are already there, right? It's the people incoming that we have to start to plan for. So yeah, that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about, yes, planning for that new resident generation, where they are and how they're connecting and how they're finding you. And so I think that starts online now because yeah, you have all this great collateral down the line, but they're not going to get there unless they start with you online. It's going to start online. Absolutely.
So this is a great segue into something else that we're going to talk about, which is SEO. It's something that we hear all the time, search engine optimization. I think we hear it, but we don't always know what it means or why we should be worrying about this. But it's very important. So, Eric, to start us off, I guess tell us what this is, why SEO is important for senior living providers, but then also like how they might utilize this in their digital marketing.
Yeah, Tim. So thanks for introducing me there. And basically your question is, what is SEO? It's search engine optimization. And here's a fun fact, Tim. To prove the point about everything I'm going to talk about here, in making the case for the shift to digital marketing, if you were to Google SEO definition, the first result's going to be from the Oxford Dictionary, and the definition reads noun, short for search engine optimization. And then they use it in a sentence, and the sentence reads, digital is now the company's main marketing channel with the majority of investment going on SEO. So basically SEO is about pleasing not just one, but two separate audiences. Knowing your audience's intent, like what terms and phrases they're searching for as it relates to a product or service, and then optimizing it in a way so that the search engines can actually find and understand it. So fundamentally, SEO is the optimization of the text, images, and now video, because bid SEO is the thing. So optimizing those on your website for the human reader and for the search engine web crawl, with the goal of improving both the quality and the quantity of traffic to your website from the search engine. So Tip O'Neill used to say in the House of Representatives that all politics are local, and in 2021, so is digital marketing for any location-based business. In fact, this goes a little to the near me that Dave was talking about. 46% of all Google searches have local intent and include the near me on mobile, and that's up 200% since 2018. And the numbers get even better when we think about the senior living researcher. So as Dave said, the number was 0 on Google Trends in 2014, senior living near me, and now it's top of the scale. So to please the digital audience, meaning the search engines, before the senior living audience, the content needs to be search engine optimized. And congratulations to Bing, a little over 2%, Yahoo, 1.5%, DuckDuckGo, a little over 2%. Good job, guys. You've got that share of, search engine marketing. But fact is, Google owns 92.41% of the search market share. And so we have to concentrate there. But it's pretty likely that the things we do to please Google they're also going to please the others. So thinking about why we need to prioritize SEO, there's actually several whys. We found that SEO on your website achieves the same results for about 38% less than lead aggregators. So, I mean, you're paying a premium for those lead companies, and they're generating the leads using the exact same methods that we're talking about right now and that we're going to talk about today. They're just beating you at local SEO and then selling you back your own leads at that premium. And you're probably thinking, how do we know that it's 38% less? Well, our clients tell us. In Boynton Beach FL and Parkland FL, our clients are ranking in the top organic spots and in the map pack, but most importantly, they organically rank over the lead ag listings. SEO continually builds equity as an owned marketing asset. So the ROI is long-term, and there's different types of digital assets. So let me break that down real quick. So owned assets are like your website, your blogs. That's what we're talking about now, SEO. But there are paid assets like banner ads and purchased PPC keywords. We're going to talk about those later. And then there's earned assets like leveraged influencer posts or likes on social media. So when we say that SEO is owned, unlike the paid assets, your organic ranking is yours. And the investment of your marketing plan into organic SEO is an appreciating asset, and the gains you make will keep generating new business. Ethically, you've dedicated your career to serving our seniors and building amazing communities that people call home. So we know statistically that the searchers are clicking on the map pack and on the top few organic listings and of course the paid listings. But if you're beyond that, your chances fall off dramatically. So that means that failing to show up at the top makes your community basically invisible, or worse, it could allow lesser products or even entities with entirely harmful intent to make contact with your potential new residents. Thinking about brand awareness and keeping new residents that are at the very top of your funnel, when people begin their search, they might type in something like senior living Palm Beach, Florida. And right then, they're at the very top of your funnel in the discovery phase of their buyer journey and your sales funnel. They have no brand preference. They're not looking to be educated, or they are looking, sorry, to be educated on their options and to comparison shop. So failing to get on their list of options at that early stage means that it's over before you even started. Let me put it this way. So GE Capital Bank has been doing what they call a major purchase study for something like 10 years. And in 2012, they found that 61% of shoppers start online when considering buying. So keep in mind, major purchases. But by 2019, it jumped to 88%, and the average number of days of research and consideration was 79 days for major purposes. And by the way, I mean, you don't have to answer this out loud, but is making a move to your community a major purchase? So digital marketing is actually refined and orderly. There are strategies and tactics that are used to successfully rank well organically, and a community that doesn't rank well isn't going to sustain or grow. The 88% that are considering a major purchase, like choosing from senior living options, they don't find you on the internet because you're not ranking at the top or organically. It's likely they never will. So how can you win the internet? You start with Google My Business. Most businesses don't even utilize it, and it's a free service. So they're not using it in any truly meaningful way. And it's simple. Basically, it's free. It's an in-depth business listing that you can populate within a few hours by just copying and pasting content from your website. The upside is tremendous. Your hands, when you fill out your Google My Business, it feeds right into the system that ranks your website. So it gets you ranking on that Google local pack that I talked about a little bit ago, and into 47.79% of the clicks. So to do Google My Business well, consistency is everything. It has to match your website and all of the other listings across the web. Google judges you by those exact matches, and I joke that the algorithm is the judge, the jury, and if it's not a great site, the executioner of your website performance. I joke about it, but it's true. And anecdotally, we've seen a correlation between paid Google ads and seeing Google My Business accounts take off as well. So hyper-local SEO is all about having your website have text that mentions your community at the local levels. So things like senior living Florida, not great, but senior living Palm Beach FL, really good. Another cool free tool is Google Trends. So it helps you stay up to date, track, compare search volumes, narrows it down to your state. And interestingly, if you think you know what are the keyword phrases that people are searching, Google knows this for sure. Now, if you've got time and room in your budget to step up that keyword phrase knowledge, you can find the different variations that you're not even going to think of yourself. So for every senior living Palm Beach, Florida that you and your competitors want to rank for organically, there's dozens of variations of that people are also searching. And being aware of what those are is a key ranking factor, because while everybody's going for that top phrase, they're not necessarily competing or even aware of all those other dozens of variations that are going to drive website traffic. So using the differentiators from your community helps you stand out. And blogs can be your best vehicle to stand out on senior living topics as a thought leader, and also pleasing Google and the searchers by answering their questions. So fresh and topical content both raise your domain authority, and they put those articles in front of the searchers as top organic results. So where do you start? Maybe you need some ideas. Start with your list of keyword search phrases, and then your blogs should be written to provide the answers to the people who are searching those keyword phrases. So keep in mind that blog doesn't only mean or always mean text, right? How-to blogs and videos that address senior living frequently asked questions are a win-win, because the searcher gets the information that they're looking for, and you win more digital real estate. A great example that I just saw was this blog that said, what questions should I ask an assisted living community? So with just one blog, they got in all of those keyword phrases at once. Another super easy win that so many communities fail to capitalize on for SEO purposes is incorporating specifics and differentiators into your web page titles and your headlines. So here's a funny question, and it's not a bad joke, but what do your community, the local church, and the Jiffy Lube all have in common? All three offer services. Now, you certainly don't offer oil changes, and they definitely don't offer memory care, but Google doesn't know that. So we need to retitle pages and headlines to include the specifics of your services, or even simply just qualify the type of services. Now, I just referred to the good blog, and that same community that I just complimented, I have to call them out for not doing the second piece of what I just said. Their service page is called services. And then when you click on a service, I clicked on assisted living, that page is just called assisted living, but it's not assisted living in their city and state. And going further down that page, their headlines, their header, they say premium services, activities, health and wellness. And while those are really good topics, and this page is answering the visitors' questions, it's not really answering Google's questions. And in that case, if you're not answering Google first, then those visitors aren't going to find your page nearly as often. There you have it, Tim. I mean, I think that's pretty much wraps up the what, why, and how senior living.
Great. And I think that the more senior living community should offer oil changes. I think that's a great idea. New ancillary.
Let's make sure that the Jiffy Lube doesn't offer memory care.
Yes, exactly. I actually want to, Eric, I want to stick on you for 1 second. We actually had a question and a comment that I think you can answer this question. But first, let's start with the comment. We got a comment that SEO is so core and requires talent who are obsessive about key metrics. It's a daily competition against competitors, and the SEOs, the people, all know what their competitors are doing every day. It's thrilling and exhausting. So interesting comment there about what we're talking about. And then also here's a question for you that I think you will be able to answer. Is there a difference between SEM and SEO? And are there different ways to activate, or are the terms interchangeable?
Josh, let me pass that one to you a little bit, and then I can come back.
Yeah, honestly, that's a perfect segue to me, Tim, because the truth is SEM is search engine marketing. And so it more specifically relates to paid search, which is my wheelhouse. And paid search is really also known as PPC. You might have heard it called pay-per-click, keywords, a lot of colloquial terms that are used, but it basically all means paid advertising, right? It's a way to market your business online where advertisers are paying every time someone clicks on an ad. So everybody wants to be found on Google. The organic ranking landscape is very competitive, ridiculously competitive. So, and that is born of Google's desire to turn a profit, right? Over 20 years ago, Google AdWords was the first iteration of paid search. And it was developed as a way for the company to drive revenue. For many years, Google was in the red. It didn't make a profit at all. And ads was the first way they really did that. Initially, that ads were 98% of Google's revenue. Today, it's still over 70%, which is pretty massive considering how many, phones and things that they build and develop. So basically, an ad will show up at the top and in fact at the bottom of a search engine results page, also known as a SERP. So anytime you're looking for something on Google, that page full of results is called a SERP, and that's where we want to rank. That's where we want to show up. The very top of that page has 4 ads. And if you're a newer company or a really small company, it can be very difficult for you to reach, the pinnacle of Google search rankings organically, right? That's going to be tough. But Google search ads give you the option to enter an auction every time somebody searches online for what you do or what you sell, right? So if someone's looking on Google for memory care, a massive online advertising auction happens in an instant. And anyone who wants to show an ad for memory care pops up and starts competing based on what they're willing to bid for that search click, what their ad copy looks like, and what their landing page looks like. Google looks at 3 factors. Yes, it's great to put a high bid in there. We want to pay $40 for anyone looking for senior living in Boynton Beach, Florida. But if you have bad ad copy or a really poor landing page experience, Google's going to penalize you and you won't be able to rank as highly. So yes, you can show up on the top of that page with an ad, but keep in mind it's not just based on what you're willing to pay. Google wants their users to have a good experience too. So if you have bad ad copy or a rough landing page, they're going to penalize that.
Just does SEM include some of the social media as well?
It can. Social media kind of blends in between SEO and SEM. It has a lot of functionality on both ends. So yeah, there are portions of social media that broach at SEM, and YouTube, which I'll talk about a little bit here in a minute, is a very specific example. And anytime, like I said, anytime someone looks for anything on Google, that auction happens in a split second. If they're looking for senior communities in Springfield, for example, Google's going to show those 4 ads on top of the page. How much are you willing to bid to show your ad in that spot? And this is, again, where if you've got the right kind of messaging and the right kind of verbiage and you're using the right terms, that cost will be a lot lower than it will for your competitors. So the why of it, paid search is really the complement to SEO. When you're doing digital marketing, a complete plan always includes both in tandem, because when you're developing an SEO profile, I like to use the analogy that it's like a locomotive. It takes time to get going, but it really gets going, and then it's hard to stop. During that ramp up, PPC, paid search, SEM, is a great way to create a catalyst for growth on the SEO side. If you're just starting that SEO campaign, you're looking at sometimes a 3, 6, even a 9-month ramp up. In that instance, a paid campaign can come in and get you to show up on page 1. And sometimes, to be clear, you don't need to win the top spot, right? If you're selling a soft drink and Coca-Cola and Pepsi are competing with you, you're probably going to lose to their pockets. But if you're showing number 3 behind them, there could still be a lot of value there. So same thing here. If you have a local entity that is going to outspend you and has been there for 50 years, it might make sense for you in that case to look for spot number 2, to be comfortable at spot number 3, for example. As long as you're on that top end of the page, there's usually some value there. So yeah, number 1 is not a necessity, but ranking on that first page absolutely is. Organic search results is kind of more geared towards the research part of the funnel, right? People are just starting to make that first interaction. Paid is a little different. We can be a lot more specific with verbiage, intentional with the dynamic of our ad. If we know they've been to our website, for example, the ad messaging can correlate that. Hey, come on back, looking for more information about what you saw before. There are a lot of ways to re-engage people and to engage people based specifically on what they were looking for. If they're looking for assisted living and we send them to a page for independent living, there's a disconnect there, right? And Google recognizes that too. And our relevance score will go down, which means our bid will have to go up. So for us, a lot of good PPC, good paid search involves having the right kind of ad copy that resonates with the messaging on the landing page, and then a correlative bid. We want the bid to be as low as we can get it to compete. And again, there are other factors that we can work on to mitigate that cost. So how? Well, one more point on why, I suppose. There's really, and we've alluded to this in Eric and Dave as well in their talks, but there's no technical correlation. Google will not tell you if you pay X, you will get Y from organic. But the Google ecosystem is very symbiotic, and it tends to work together in many different ways. We've talked about Google My Business. We've talked about reviews and organic versus paid. Google My Business, smart campaigns, the map pack. The map pack is just when you see, that ad on Google Maps that shows all the different people. As you zoom into the map, you see more businesses. All of that stuff works together. If you're showing a Google ad for senior living in your community and you're doing SEO to rank organically, and you have a Google My Business listing that's been, actively populated, all of these things work together and tend to support each other. So when we run PPC for a new company, for example, we very much like to follow the organic trends and the Google My Business volume that comes with it, because again, while there's no technical correlation, X is Y, we see a very positive impact, anecdotal or otherwise, that we want to capitalize on. And so how would we do that? Paid search has a lot of different nuances. It gets pretty nerdy and involved. It's a Google, it's really their main, what they're really known for. So, and we talked about the market share there too. It's pretty ridiculous. Google does dominate the search market. There's validity to Microsoft. Facebook has value as well. But when we're looking at paid search, it makes sense for us to just default to Google because most of our activity is going to be there. And standard paid search relates to keywords. Most of us have heard the word AdWords. Google Ads was called AdWords for 17 years until it was recently renamed. And the reason it was renamed is because paid search doesn't always necessarily relate to a keyword. You can have paid search ads that show a YouTube video that has a virtual tour of your facility. People watching that video, clicking through there, are engaging with you through an ad, but it's not a keyword, right? It's not necessarily a keyword. So paid ads, while it does generally relate to search terms and things that people type into Google, it also has to do with reviews and YouTube video content and other things too. And when you have all of these things working in systematically, you're going to have a lot of really good benefit from your PPC. So not just keyword based, there are a lot of different aspects to paid search that are part of that mix. Retargeting potential. In the past, a year ago, COVID beside, we used to be able to remarket to people based on if they'd been to our website. Anyone who's looked at our community online who didn't call us or submit a form, we could hit them with an ad that basically asks them to come back, like all of us have seen online. If you've ever bought a car or an engagement ring or something, you'll usually have an ad follow you around ad nauseum. But in summer of 2020, Google changed the rules. We're not allowed to remarket to people with memory care, assisted living, or skilled nursing aspects of their business, right? So it doesn't mean we can't remarket at all, because independent living still has availability there. But the way we used to do things is a little bit different, because we don't want to get into personal references about people's health condition, and that's where assisted living remarketing got into. So Google pulled that from the options, but you still have a lot of potential to remarket to independent living. And in place of remarketing, Google's allowed us to develop audience segments, which can effectively be a proxy for what used to be retargeting. The leads that you get from ads are people who are ready to make that purchase, right? They're ready to call someone to ask about the specifics of your facility, the cost, the timeline to get in. They're really at the end of the so-called funnel. So paid ads, while they're not, it's not an owned entity the way SEO is. I consider it kind of like leasing versus buying. It can be a really good way to accelerate your SEO and your the volume to your website while waiting for all of that to come up organically. PPC does involve paid search, does involve a lot of platforms. Again, Google is still king, but Microsoft, aka Bing, and Facebook both have value as well. And one thing to keep in mind when you're asking questions about Facebook versus Google, people go to Google to make a search for what they're looking for right then, right? They go to Google to make a purchase, to make a decision, to make a call and ask, what the deal is. How can I get in? How can I buy? Facebook's different. People are socializing on Facebook. They're not necessarily going there to make a decision or to do something with intent. They're kind of just hanging around. So there's value there, but just keep in mind, if we're looking at something that is attempting to drive leads and bring people who are specifically looking for communities to live in, Facebook has a different dynamic, and we want to make sure that for lead generation, we're looking at search platforms as a higher priority there. And touching on that a little bit, going back to YouTube, YouTube has massive advertising value. It is a piece of the Google ecosystem. Google bought YouTube about 5 years ago, I think. And technically, YouTube is the #1 search engine in the world based on how many people use the search bar on that platform. So virtual tours, testimonials, there are a lot of ways that you can use YouTube to bolster the facility that you have, to promote valuable content. Video content doesn't cost that much to produce nowadays. So anyone who's not looking at YouTube as a viable piece of their marketing mix, in my opinion, should be. And this touches on the social media question earlier. Is social media SEM or SEO? It's kind of both. And in this case, it does both. YouTube will drive interest to your brand. You can show your facility, new or old, if you've been there 20 years or if you're newly opening, it still has the same kind of value from a visual perspective. So when we're looking at paid search, consider keywords. We have things like Google My Business and Maps, but YouTube is a big piece of that too. Especially the pandemic proved that if we have a virtual asset that people can engage with while they can't go to our facilities, it can produce a ton of value, and YouTube definitely proved to do that during the pandemic. But ads also allow you to vary your messaging. If you know that you're targeting someone who's in a specific community, you can use ad copy that relates to that. If you know you're going for skilled nursing, candidates, you're going to use verbiage that very much caters to their needs. So a little bit different than organic in how you can tailor that messaging and really speak to them where they are in the funnel. If they're new to your brand, searching something like senior living in Florida, like Dave showed earlier, you're going to give them a very general message that encourages them to ask for more info. If they know your brand and maybe they've been to your website, your messaging may be a little different. Hey, you've already seen us, give us a call today, looking for information on next steps, etc. Right? You can really customize your ad copy and your ad placements to the audience that you're looking for. And lastly, I'll just say that, as we thaw out from this awful COVID thing, and we see senior living inquiries start to really go up as we have for the last 2 months or so, these things are going to be even more critical because there's going to be a windfall of interest in people getting back to normal, and then the resultant seasonality and everything that we should expect to see after COVID. So if your marketing plan isn't touching on a lot of the points that we've made so far, the timing is right to to get into some of these ideas and explore a lot of this, because things are getting back to normal and we want to be positioned to take full advantage of that.
Great. Josh, thank you so much for that detailed explanation. So I've noticed while you were talking, we got a flurry of questions, like way more than we can probably answer. And I know we've got about 24 minutes left in the presentation today, and we have a lot of ground to cover. So I wanted to tell our audience, we'll try to get to as many of these questions as we can at the end of our presentation if we have time. If not, we will be able to save these questions, and Dreamscape can perhaps answer some of this for you after the end of the presentation. So Dave, to keep things moving along, I wanted to talk with you about in the age of reviews, when customers can leave their thoughts about products and services, how should senior living providers be thinking about their digital marketing in light of the fact that now it's sort of a two-way conversation?
Yeah, so I'll give my short answer and then I'll go into my long answer, and you can, I'll go off on a rant. But anyway, this is kind of my wheelhouse, right? So the short answer is, right, it's the period, most period, important period, digital marketing asset you own, period. That's my short answer. All right. So I have the benefit of, I came into the professional world around 2002. So right, pretty much at the outset of social media, the internet's been around a couple of years. MySpace is there, but Facebook is about 2 years away still. So you consider MySpace to be. But anyway, so I literally spent a career watching this play out for marketers and being one myself. So it's kind of on my own case study, I guess. So at that point, right, it's kind of interesting to consider, at that point of the internet, at the point of Facebook and social media, marketing ceased to be a one-way conversation, right? The guys back in the Mad Men days had it beautiful, right? Print, TV, radio, you speak to them, no, it's perfect, right? The internet, for better or worse, changed that marketing and the consumer's ability, or it gave them, their ability to raise an equal voice to your brand. This is great for consumers, but adds pressure to people like me, right? So marketers and brand managers. So you have to develop a tone. You have to develop a strategy around that. It's taking it. You have to have that customer service oriented. You have to have the answers. You have to be able to talk back, even in difficult situations. So if you're the one working in ORM or online reputation management, you are working from one of two positions. You are either working proactively to establish, maintain, and grow your online reputation. You're doing that hard work, or you're working to repair a damaged one. And it's always better to be working on the former, because if you're working on the latter, you're losing business. Like, you are literally losing business. All the things we're talking about, that we've talked about so far, man, it just kills those efforts. If they see that terrible review, or the litany of terrible reviews, the bad rating, the rest of it gets hurt too. So why? So that's the why, right? Let's do the math on your review count. Now, principally, we've been talking about Google, and Google feeds in Google reviews, feeds into Google. So that's where we want to concentrate. But we're also talking about like Yelp and all your other directory sites too. So can a handful of bad reviews, you really need to look at that. Your star rating on Google and other directory sites, they go far beyond a fun graphic and a brag point. Like, we use them as marketing points, but they go way beyond that. They are trust indicators. Think about this. Think about the last time you searched for even a product online. Sort my results by the highest rated, or on Amazon. I only want to see 5-star and 4-star companies. So it's a trust indicator, and it's a major ranking factor on Google, because again, they are feeding right into Google. So Timeliness too. So you've got good reviews, but guess what? They have expiration dates. There's absolutely a point at which a customer no longer considers even your positive reviews valid. Anybody want to guess? All right, it's 3 months. That's terrifying, isn't it? Now that's one study and it varies, but let's take the best case scenario. Let's double it and say you've got 6 months. You need to be constantly. This is an ongoing process basically. So a couple, more stats on that. 85% of customers trust online reviews as much as personal recommendations. That's huge. 3 out of 4 trust a company more if it has positive reviews. So you need them. 60% say that negative reviews made them not want to do business. So like if you're in that, you're cooked right there. So consumers read an average of 7. And so the amount you need in the industry you need varies. Some companies are down here, you need a dozen or two. Hospitality is way, way up at the top. And so, senior living being kind of at that intersection of healthcare and hospitality, you're edging towards that top of the bell curve, right? So 7 is not enough to say that. So devastating is, and most people are not down in this area, but 1- and 2-star companies, 86% failure rate. And that's just, you can't be there. So how do we deal with this? So your plan needs to be kind of like I said already, active and ongoing. So, we need to be setting up an ongoing process to ask for reviews at every resident community touch point that we can think of on the topic of services, on the topic of staff, on the topic of facilities. Every time the residents and the community interact, there's a chance there for feedback, right? So that stat above about reviews, there is a stat, I should say, people are more apt to leave negative reviews than positive ones at about a 1/3 ratio. So you don't have to be passive here. So when you're thinking about setting this up, people get a little hesitant. They feel a little shy, a little funny. They feel like maybe they're being intrusive, but multiple studies show, and the one I'm citing in particular has a 68% chance that a customer will leave a review if asked. So you don't have to feel uncomfortable about this. It's not out of place anymore. You're simply asking for their honest feedback. Sometimes it might be negative, and that's a chance to improve, right? But there's an inherent risk there. But most are going to be positive, and most are going to work with you. So put the ask in terms of benefiting the community. This is their community too. They love this place. This is their home. So empower them to be an advocate for their own community. Depending on the size of your staff, you can take this on, start it manually, right? So, but that's important, right? Start. Don't overthink this. Start, right? Start building this reputation, right? There are inexpensive automation tools that can help you with this, and as you grow, you're going to probably need them so you don't miss opportunities. But just please start, right? It's so critical. And this is where the touchy, so my background's in creative, I come from the touchy-feely side of marketing. So, the brand story and the brand, so that's where I come from, what I call H2H, human-to-human marketing. So now you've got that plan in place, and that's pretty like nuts and bolts, right? But now you can let's capitalize on that, right? Turn those positive reviews back into your own ads. Identify the ones that are the most compelling and flush them out, right? Turn them into videos, turn them into profiles, full-fledged marketing pieces. Like, you don't have to, look, you can and should put out well-crafted marketing copy. I'd like to keep my job, right? But all your competitors do that too. There's a me at every competitor you have, right? So your chance for differentiation here, your chance to is sharing these real life experiences that are coming from the feedback. Like, it starts with these tiny little reviews, but you can blow that up and really take advantage. So these real life examples are the proof that only exist in your community. And so the real outcomes for real residents that prove the points that you make in your marketing copy are so, so valuable. So I just think 2 parts of reputation management. First, you have to manage it, but you also have to grow it and then capitalize on it. So that's really, it feeds the machine, it feeds your marketing, it's absolutely critical. So that's my idea.
Great. And we talked a little bit about social media within there. And Lisa, we have not heard from you today, so I'm eager to get you involved in this discussion. Uh, and I wanted to remind our audience, if you have questions, keep them coming. We have about 15, maybe a little bit more minutes today, but again, we'll try to answer some of these after the presentation if we can't get to them today. Lisa, let's talk about social media. I think that we all know social media can offer marketing opportunities, both paid and unpaid, but can you talk to us about how providers should think about social media when they're coming up with their digital marketing strategies, and also just why social media is important?
Yeah, absolutely, Tim. So first, we think it's really important to understand that there are both organic and paid opportunities in social media. So we should look at both and really understand where they fit into your marketing plan and whether they direct new resident conversions or not. So it's kind of like how Google is such an interconnected family of apps. Facebook has gone way past just being a peer-to-peer social network to now where it's a full-fledged media outlet offering you all kinds of content that's really designed to keep you from leaving your platform. I think we all know Facebook sucks you in. Because more and more consumers engage and live in that Facebook environment, they're using it more for information and research on businesses. In fact, a 2021 study showed that 54% of users are using social media to research products. 71% of consumers who have had a positive experience with a brand on social media are likely to recommend the brand to their friends and family. AARP said that people ages 50 and older are using social media on a regular basis. And you're going to notice that we keep talking about Facebook very specifically as opposed to talking about social media in general. And that's for a very specific reason. I want you to hear me on this. Seniors are the fastest growing demographic on Facebook. Because of that, we really need to prepare for the Facebook version of the new resident journey that starts and ends with their community search on Facebook. So looking at how that's done from an organic side, that means you really need your brand to be wholly represented on the platform. We need to see a business page where your brand is as faithfully represented as it is on your website. But here it goes a step further, again, talking about that two-way conversation going into play. And maintaining that conversation and your reputation require a constant, active, positive customer service voice. Fresh content is so key with Facebook. Searchers really need to see an active business page. Your content has to be useful. It can be hard to come up with something to post every day. Part of the reason for that is we've become so desensitized to our surrounding and all of that meaningful work that we're doing day in and day out. We forget exactly how amazing the services that we're providing are and why living in our community is so special to our residents. There's certainly commercial options to help you develop and post content, but this is really where that human-to-human marketing comes in. As someone who's recently newly coming into contact with your brand, of course, I'm going to be impressed by the trappings, your campus, your activities, your healthcare, dining, social life. But just writing about them doesn't really prove anything. As a future resident, and more importantly, as the child of one, I want to see these things in practice. This is really the place for boots on the ground, videos of your most important asset, and that's the people who are bringing the lifestyle to life every day. Another idea to consider is a topic group. I've seen many instances where a for-profit business simply moderates a group, something like Senior Living Topics in My Town, USA. They freely just let individuals have discussions, and this allows for an organic group just to drive membership and engagement of people who have self-identified as local prospects. But really, you need to realign, and we need to all realign our thinking. As mid to late career professionals, we have to stop thinking of new residents in terms of our grandparents, like we already said. At 36, I'm now very close to being the adult child decision maker, and I'm definitely a Google first researcher. And I'm not talking about my grandparents. I'm talking about my parents who are now in their late 60s. And I can tell you from my Facebook feed, they and their friends and peers are definitely on their phone and on Facebook. So one more thing before we continue, just a fun tip. The social media platform that's a mix of hyper-local and advice seeking is Nextdoor. They actually now feed local ads in with their main news feed. And just last week, I happened to see a user on this feed asking for senior housing recommendations.
That is a good tip, and I'm a very casual user of Nextdoor, and I see people asking for advice and things all the time, so that makes a lot of sense. All right, we have about 10 minutes left here, Dave, and I think you've got something maybe to take us out with to end our conversation with. So I have talked with so many providers over the past year and change who have told me that when the pandemic first hit, last March, April, their website traffic really shot through the roof, and it's mostly stayed there in the time since. So can you talk to us about, as providers are seeing more and more web traffic these days, how can they convert those website visitors into leads?
Super important. I mean, obviously after SEO, we want to get you to our site, but I've heard that too. And let me make a little comment before I answer about digital traffic shooting through the roof. Right. Please, 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 please do not rest on that. Right. So a high tide raises all ships. We've all heard that. The surge is coming from digital being the only option for the last 13 months in pent-up demand. Everyone is going to feel the boom. It's the same reason like people are paying $50,000 ever asking for a house right now. Same idea. The pent-up demand and the boom. So every house, even all the houses are feeling the same boom. When the market resettles, it's the communities who have put their digital marketing pipeline in place that are going to capture it for good. So please do not sleep on that. Please do not rely on that. It's not forever. So anyway, so to talk specifically about your website and, you're not monitoring your website, right hands-on in the moment. So let's talk about that. So we've done all the above. We've done the social, the SEO, we've done everything we've already talked about. And some new residents will have made contact with you directly from those topics up there, from the search engine, directory site, social media. But so what about this person who clicks through to your website? How do we make sure that they convert? So, all right, let's talk through that. A prospective new resident has landed on your website. Yay, your digital marketing is a success. Winner, love it. Okay, so now by the mere fact that they made it this far, as opposed to contacting you directly through GMB, email, text, call, direct message, means that they are still looking for something in my mind. A question that has not yet been answered. They've been through all of that other stuff, all the pre-website stuff, and something is still not solidified for them. So they're on your website and then they leave. Maybe they found the answer, maybe they've given up, or maybe the kid who cuts their grass has ran over the sprinkler head for the 4th time and the yard is flooding. The point is you don't know. You have no idea why they left without engaging further, but we do know that it's critical to find out. So why? One of my favorite things to cite is Occam's razor, right? The simplest explanation is usually a dumbed down version, but anyway. It's quite possible that a bad user experience left them frustrated trying to find the answer they needed to continue their journey with you. I can go through a ton of UX stats if you want, but they go through people stop engaging when load times take too long. Your mobile site needs to be better than the desktop site. People don't come back if they've had a bad or confusing experience. So UX stats go on and on. So obviously when you're talking about conversion issues, the first step, but not one most of us are really equipped to do on our own, certainly I'm not, is through a review of our site's UX design. So that's something for more technical guys to look at, right? So while you're waiting on an answer from your web team on that, consider what you can do as marketers, right? It might be helpful to think of your website as a first date. We're on our best behavior. We are presenting a polished version of the whole picture that is us, right? Meanwhile, the person opposite us is probing us for the answers they need in order to determine that we are compatible and give us their real phone number. So as marketers, let's control the things that we can control while we wait on that UX assessment. So let's consider what we can do to spark meaningful conversation and get that all-important second date. Basically, let's keep the conversation going. We need to capture their contact information. But not only that, we should also be noting very specific things like what page they entered our site on, from where, on what page they left. This is going to give us the best chance. This is going to give us context, right? It's going to give us the best chance for a meaningful follow-up conversation because we now know they're interested. They're at least considering us. We're in the running, right? And if we know when they left, we know where they entered, we might know the issue that brought them to us. And if we know the page they left on, we might even know the topic that is unresolved. So huge to capture that. So how, right? A bunch of things here, honestly. This could be as passive. I wouldn't recommend being passive, but it could be as passive as a form with a call to action to ask more questions, be in contact with the community rep. That's super passive, but it's also easy for people to say yes to. So don't sleep on that, right? But you can take it a step further. You can do a pop-up that offers them a benefit, right? You get to a site, and before some people, there's a debate on this, but offer them a benefit for sharing their email as they enter your site. Or maybe even better is the hey before you go pop-up as they click out. Hey, I see you're leaving. Is there anything else? Could we send you something? Could we talk? Could we do something there just to grab them a little more, engage a little more? You want to go further still? There are companies out there. You can do it yourself, but there are companies that do questionnaire style assessment tools. Incredibly helpful because they're legitimately going to help that consumer solidify whether your community is a good match. And lastly, again, another service, but amazing, right? Live chat. The ability to move that navigation of your site. So somebody's on your site and it's a self-guided tour, right? They're just wandering around. But if you're using live chat, that becomes a one-to-one tour guide experience. And I think that's huge. Those personal connections right away, I think that's huge. So yeah, that's my take.
I'll pick it up from there, Dave, as the strategy.
I want to jump in here real fast. I just want to remind you that we're coming up at the end of time, so maybe make this the bullet points. I know that you also all have some information you want to share with us before we're over, so I want to make sure we can get to that too. So I just wanted to say that. Anyway, go ahead.
So whatever it looks like in your plan from a strategy perspective, our job is now to take their interest and amplify it through this consistent messaging. So we talked a little bit about retargeting. Make sure you talk to someone like Josh. Think about email drip campaigns, space them out, keep your community top of mind as people continue their search. Think about maybe video email services. Could make a cold follow-up a lot warmer, seeing someone's face. Chat and video chat on your site. We all know how to use Zoom now, so doesn't it make sense to have someone available right then who can make that human-to-human connection we've been talking about? Print is not dead yet, so direct mail can be super important. I mean, a lot of people say direct mail is more personal than all of these online actions. So as Dave's been saying, don't sleep on that. Almost half the people who get your direct mail, 42%, they read or scan it. And so they want direct mail from brands that interest them. And then on occasion, it would be okay to actually make a direct phone call if they're in your funnel and far enough down the funnel. Maybe the last page they were on was book an in-person tour. And so it could be entirely appropriate to make that direct phone call. So summing it up and then passing it back, Tim, the tactics we're talking about, they all start with having these systems in place to capture the information from your visitors and have a plan to follow up.
Great, and I wish we could get to more of this. This is a really interesting topic. It's a lot more, I think, than you could go for hours on this, I think. But before we wrap up, Dave, I know that you had some, you wanted to tell us how maybe we can learn more about some of this in the future. You all are going to be involved in some things, so tell us about that.
Well, yeah, no, thanks. And right, so we burned our hour pretty quickly. So I just wanted to say, we've been on these tiny screens for a year now, and so I think we're all ready to get, to hit the road and see everyone again. So I just want to say, we do, our members and support all the senior living organizations, Argentum, Senior Housing News, of course, SMASH, NIC. We'll be at all those events in the fall, so we would love to see everybody in person. So I just want to mention that. We actually, Dreamscape puts on its own senior living digital marketing event. It's a 2-day event. It is online. It's always online. But that's coming up June 16th and 17th. So that's at seniorcaredigitalmarketingconference.com. But on the page, we're getting all the information updated right now from last year. So that's coming up in June if you want to join us. But yeah, really, I just want to say we're very excited to kind of like get back out there in the world and see everybody this fall. And, as I've been talking to people over the year, I just want to say one last thing on a personal note. As senior living marketers, and, we have all just forged a path through the toughest, and this is my thing, right? The toughest year in history to be a senior living marketer. So please, when you leave here today, take a moment to reflect on that and be proud of yourself, because you have done amazing work for 13 months, and it's just astounding, and you should all be proud. So that's how I want to do it.
Well, those are great words to end it on. So thank you so much for all of our panelists. Thank you guys for coming on today and talking to us about digital marketing. Again, this is a really deep topic, and I think you summed it up pretty well. I also want to, of course, thank our viewers. We wouldn't be doing this without you. So thanks for tuning in. And that does it for today's webinar. So have a great day, everyone. Thanks for tuning in.